Hello, Bob Wells here, and welcome back to the Undercurrent Stories podcast. Now, you might well be asking where our normal music is. Well, today we've got a very special episode, and I invite you to take a break from the turbulent world that we live in, sit back, and come with me on a journey to discover the world of sound healing. I hope you enjoy the episode. Today we're exploring the practice of sound healing, the use of vibration and resonance to influence the mind, body and spirit. Our guest is Cherub Sanson, a sound healer whose work draws on both ancient traditions and contemporary approaches to well-being. Through instruments such as crystal bowls, gongs and the human voice itself, Cherub invites participants into an immersive experience of sound, one that can calm the nervous system, open emotional pathways and restore balance to the body's energetic field. We'll be discussing how sound affects us at a physiological and psychological level, and why so many people are turning to these practices in search of stillness and connection. Hello and welcome to the show, Cherub.
Thank you. What a beautiful intro.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks for that. But I'll tell you something. How do you feel about being described as a tiny fairy of a person with hands that have been performing magic with sound healing for over a decade?
Was that an Elle interview?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Farrah Store from Elle magazine. Yeah.
One of the best descriptions I've ever had. Better than Diego Forlan, a Man United football player, which someone said I once looked like.
Well, thank you ever so much for coming on the show. And before we talk about the sound healing itself and the training that you do on that, Cherub, could you just please tell us a bit about yourself, your life growing up, and your life's journey, and how you discovered the healing power of sound?
Wow, we're diving straight in there. I was reflecting on this earlier as I knew I was preparing for this podcast, and the story that I always tell about how I got into sound on other podcasts is usually always the same one, because it is my story, and it's about how I traveled around in my 20s for about 6-7 years and explored different cultures and tribes where sound was the central axis of these communities and how they communicated with each other. But only recently I've been reflecting more on how my earlier childhood led me to that. And actually, this is the first time that I'm ever sharing this. I was not musically gifted. I was reflecting on it before, and I didn't have a musical childhood per se. I never wanted to be in music when I was younger. Always wanted to be in the spotlight. I'm a Leo, but never managed to quite get there. So never got to be the main lead in the plays. I think Frenchie in Greece is as far as I ever got to the spotlight. I was in choirs, but never picked for the main role. Played piano because my parents encouraged it, but it wasn't something that I was destined for. There was no outstanding skill there whatsoever. Actually, distinctly average in the musical and sound arena. Really, what I was so passionate about when I was a child was storytelling. I only remembered this the other day, but when I was in primary school, I used to fold over white pieces of A4 paper, write on it, and create my own magazine called Animal Crazy. I'd take it into the head teacher's office, photocopy it, and then go out in the playground and sell it for 10p on my breaks. Wow. And I only just remembered that the other day. And so I was so passionate from an early age just about inspiring people, spreading a message and educating people. And that thread carried on through my whole childhood. I was a poet. I wanted to be an author, a journalist, anyone that could speak truth to people and inspire and empower. And it wasn't until I then went traveling and experiencing different cultures that it then kind of all landed for me that the story, the theme of my storytelling was going to be sound. Because after having spent so much time in different cultures where sound is the very thing that keeps everybody connected to that tribal life pulse and rhythm of Earth, that then became my most healthiest obsession. And after traveling, came back to the UK and became so supremely passionate about telling the story of sound, helping people waking up to the power of their own frequency. Because ultimately, I think what happens is when you start to reconnect to your own pure soul tone through aligning with therapeutic sound, healing harmonious frequencies that are going to help you feel more recalibrated, rebalanced, more connected to the true you, that's when you start to become a conscious co-creator of your own life story, and you begin to shape your own story and really start to actively participate in your own life. And so in a way, I've almost fused both passions. It's sonic storytelling. That's become my greatest life's purpose.
Well, thank you for that. Was there a particular moment? Did you have like an epiphany or anything at one moment when you were listening to sound? You thought, yeah, this is it.
I did actually. It was in Brazil. We were on an island off the coast of Bahia with my best friend, Nick Murdoch, and we were lying around a campfire amongst a tribe that were all naked except loincloths, fully painted in red with all patterns and, those really interesting tattoos that are kind of spiked on, not the tattoos we do in the West. So really tribal tattoos. And there was a native elder, and it was just coming up to sunrise. A native elder was playing this Native American flute, which I don't think I'd ever heard before. And we were lying on the beach after having the most wild night. We had been up all night, and we were surrounded by these incredible natives of this island. And this elder was playing the flute, and I could feel and sense energetically that as he played up to the heavens, the stardust trickled down from the stars and then touched the trees and lit up the trees, which then lit up a cobweb inside a tree. And then the sparkles from that dropped down onto the grass, which then lit all the dew upon the grass. And I just felt like I was surrounded by glitter and sonic sparkle. And it was that moment, I remember it so vividly. I thought, I have to learn about the Native American flute and play it. And it was hooking on to that instrument beyond many other experiences of shruti boxes and mantra in India and djembe drumming in Jamaica. But it was that one that made me want to go on this soul quest to learn how to use sound for myself first and foremost. And then it flowed into wanting to help activate and empower the rest of humanity through the compassionate use of sound.
That must have been a magic moment.
It was.
What is it about sound itself then, from a technical perspective? I mean, I hear, I see things on Spotify with so many hertz and vibrations and stuff like that. Could you just explain what it is about sound that encompasses what it does to us?
Yeah, I think we're more and more now, we're beginning to tap into the very vibratory nature of all things. Whereas when I first moved into this field in 2010, it was more in the esoteric section, and the people that were into sound back then weren't on this quest for how does it work, why. It was more just accepted as this internal knowing that sound is this ancient and indigenous experience that is part of the very makeup, the genetic makeup of who we are. It's been around since the beginning of time. When I got into it, my question was, but how does sound work, and how does it work in the body? And so I then went on a bit of a quest myself to understand the physiological processes of it. And more now, grounded Western scientific experimentation is starting to align with what the ancients always knew, that yes, it is a way to reconnect back to oneself, but on more of a physiological point of view, it can help create this temporary shift from left brain to right brain dominance, which allows us to become more creative, more empathetic, more compassionate, which ultimately is what the world needs more of. It releases some very powerful neurochemical processes in the brain, which helps to regulate the immune system, stabilize the vagus nerve, lower cortisol levels, reduce stress, help us to feel more connected, more balanced, calmer, and bring us back to a sense of peace. And that's ultimately what we need, is that we're all living on this fight or flight mentality, especially in, these busy built up cities in the West. And therapeutic sound just really helps to work as a nervous system regulator. It brings us back into balance. And that's what we want: stress down, empathy up. And ultimately that's what sound gives us. It's like you get all the benefits of meditation without having to sit there uncomfortably and feeling a little bit confused about what you're supposed to be doing. Sound just takes you there naturally.
So is it a sort of stopgap or a replacement for meditation, or does it supplement meditation?
All of those. I think it's an excellent supplement, because I do both. I meditate like 5 days a week, first thing in the morning, and I practice sound too. But I think it's in the meditation where I gain clarity and insight and wisdom and connection to those higher realms. But it's in sound that I come back to me. I come back to my breath. I get into the space and the peace between my own thoughts, and it brings me into that timelessness of being. So I feel like the sound can bring one back into their body and reconnect us back to the truest version of ourselves. And meditation can often become the gateway to higher levels of consciousness. And sound can obviously do that too. But I think let's not make it so fanciful. Just experience it and get back in your body. Like we're all tearing our minds and souls to shreds in the pace that we live. And I think sound healing can be the ultimate facilitator to just slow the mind down, bring us back into the parasympathetic nervous system, reduce stress, and help us just to feel calm and chill out and let meditation do the rest.
It does seem to be growing in popularity, the sound healing aspect. I mean, I was only walking at the weekend through my local town, which is Stamford in South Lincolnshire. And there was a shop there that hadn't been opened. It was sort of blacked out, but it said sound healing, something or the other, and physiotherapy, opening soon. So it definitely seems to be gaining ground.
Absolutely. And I noticed, I mean, like I said, this is my 15th year I'm coming into now. And when I first got into it, it was so hard to get people to believe in this. I remember people saying to me, what's your plan B? This is a hobby. It can't ever be a full-time sustainable business. And I very much have that entrepreneurial spirit. So my motto back then was I can and I will. Watch me. I was so dedicated to it because I just knew this is what the world needs more of. But the biggest surge, I think, of interest in it that I've noticed as I step back as an observer of the whole field was lockdown, was that moment when those that maybe would have seen sound healing as a luxury or alternative or spiritual before, and that didn't resonate with them. What they realized, what we all realized during lockdown is processes that help to balance out our mental health are not luxuries. They are daily necessities. So people turn to sound healing a lot during that time. And out the other side, it's like we're at this real crest of a wave now. And it feels like this is what many of us in the sound space have known is possible, this expansiveness to bring it into the collective field of awareness so that it's in festivals, it's in magazines, it's in clubs. We played Fabric this year. So it's now becoming this more mainstream experience that people aren't just tagging it on to it being spiritual and exclusive only for that community. Busy corporates, stressful creatives from every walk of life are turning to it as a solace. And it's not really being seen anymore as an alternative therapy. It's becoming a legitimate mode of healing and transformation.
So I guess at one point it was considered a little bit woo-woo.
Yeah, and it still is. It still is in some circles because, of course, in a way, yes, like it is a spiritual experience. So if you think about, is sound healing spiritual and is it only spiritual people that can benefit from it? My response to that, I guess, would be if we look at and actually break down the word spirit, it comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means breathe, breath. So that's life force. When you start to live and walk that path, you realize that everything that we do, every action is infused with spirit, not in a like this kind of mystical, unattainable way, but in a really human kind of mundane day-to-day way. It's in the way we drink our morning coffee. It's in the way we smile at baristas and they smile back. It's just in every little minuscule interaction that brings us into presence every day. And so sound fits into that so naturally because sound rides on the breath carries vibration, and the vibration moves and impacts our inner world, which then mirrors and impacts our external experience. So when we're working with sound, I don't believe that we're doing anything different or esoteric or necessarily spiritual. Sound healing is just a really potent, fast track way to reconnect with that life force that's actually already in us, already around us. So in a sense, sound healing is just, it's only as spiritual as is being alive. So The way I see it is breath means spirit. Breath is the wave. Sound healing is the surfboard, and we are the surfer. It's just, for me, it's the most natural way to reconnect. So yes, in a way it's spiritual, but also it's day to day. It's accessible. Yeah. And I've spent so much time in this past decade aiming to debunk that myth, actually, that it's only for spiritual people. Let's make this relatable to everybody in the same way that techno is and folk music. It's the same. It's just all music is medicine and sound healing is another variation of that.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't tap their foot to a beat going on? And I've got 4 young grandchildren, and you can see them even at 6 or 9 months. A bit of music goes on, and they're sort of bopping away. It comes very naturally. It's interesting what you were saying there about the spirituality thing, because I mean, for me, it sort of, I was thinking, oh yeah, it's really spiritual. It chakras and all this stuff, and minerals, quartz, and all that sort of thing. But you're saying it's actually more day to day than that. Not quite as mystical as I might think.
Well, I think it's what you seek.
Yeah.
Whatever you seek in it, you will find. So for those that are looking for that, full multi-chakra alignment and deep connection to the cosmos, if you're seeking that, if you're open to that, you can very much access those realms. But we change our approach to it dependent on who the audience is. So when we go into corporate, or for example, when we played Glastonbury, like we change our language and our description of it so that the people that are receiving it can relate. So when we go into corporate, we speak very much about the physiological benefits, the fact that it can aid and improve sleep, strengthen your concentration. And then if we're on a festival stage, we talk about oneness and connection and that tribal connectivity that music brings. And then when we're in more spiritual circles, we can tap into that more celestial realm. So I think it can be whatever you choose it to be. It's so malleable based on what you're looking for.
Yeah. And how does it fit? I mean, have you had any discussions with people from organised religion?
Yes, we've played in churches, we've played in mosques, we've played in the Great Pyramid, we've played in situations where religion is much stronger, let's say, than how maybe we access it in the West. I would say that my approach to it has been more kind of, if I had to choose a religion, I guess it would be leaning more towards the Buddhist essence, the oneness, the interconnectedness of all, the vibratory nature of life. But essentially, whenever we play it in sacred houses from various other religions, it's always received in the same way. And we will just, again, adapt our approach so that it feels inclusive. And if you think about every single religion on earth, they all integrate sound within them in some way, whether it's chanting, singing, bells, prayers, hymns, Gregorian chanting from the Christian religion. So sound is often the bridge between the human and the divine. It's the gateway, like the church would be in Catholicism. Sound is what bridges man to God or to earth and beyond. And if you then look beyond that and we go into the origin of many creation and religious stories worldwide, whether it's any different religion, sound and symbolism actually echoes through all ancient civilizations right back to the dawning of their creation. I mean, we could do a whole hour on that, just on that topic alone, but just to think about some of the obvious ones. So if we look at the creation stories, we've got the Bible, the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and essentially the Word is a sound. And Hindu, the hum, the sacred which is supposedly the vibration of creation, that was supposedly this primordial resonant source that brought everything into creation, just uttering the word Om. And then we've got the Sarasvati creation story, which again is about divine speech and mantra, sort of invoking the world into being through sound. Grandmother Spider from the Hopi creation story, there was something about singing the songs of creation. And then you've got the Aboriginals from Dreamtime in Australia, who activated the earth through the great didgeridoo. I could go on, but every single religion actually resonates with sound at its very core. And that's, as I've expanded through this field myself, that's how I've become so passionate about sharing that story, that if we all start to reconnect back to our true soul tone, our own pure, unique vibration, then we almost find that connection to ourselves and to whatever element of religion or God presence or essence that we connect to. I think that sound is the carrier wave of consciousness that makes that connection tangible.
Absolutely fascinating. And in terms of the instruments, you mentioned a bit earlier on about the flute that you listened to when you had your epiphany and learning it. What types of instruments do you perform with?
Well, I love the flute. I think I'm most connected to that because my teacher and maestro and mentor and brother, Tim Wheater, the native flute was his absolute, he's one of the greatest flautists of all time. So I'm very connected to that on an emotional, meaningful level. But the gong for me, I think, is one of the most powerful instruments because it puts out this one fundamental tone, but then is one of the only instruments that covers the whole spectrum of sound. So it kicks out all these overtones and undertones and harmonics infinitely. It's like you get in front of a gong, there's no way you're not getting healed because it contains within it all the healing frequencies that everybody needs of some variation. So, and I just love where you can take it. It tells its own story. And I love crystal bowls. I love the healing and potent power of quartz, which is itself, of course, a military technology. It's advanced technology. We all contain quartz within our bodies as well. So we've got a very natural connection and affinity to crystal. I think that's why crystal balls have become so popular recently. Anything can be an instrument. Our voices, a tin of beans. Get creative and just explore and make music. So I love experimenting with all kinds of weird metallic bat wing type sounds that you play with a violin bow, and we love exploring different instruments from different cultures and fusing them into our soundscape.
What about hand drums? I was listening to some of that the other day. They seem quite as though they would fit in.
I do like those. I think sometimes they can sound a bit tinny, but I think played well in a beautiful, slow, dreamy, melodic. I think that's the essence of really capturing the artistry of sound healing, is to create spaciousness and allow people to just float on this sonic bed that's comforting. So to not make it too melodic, not too repetitive, because that calls the brain and it activates certain regions within the brain that encourages the listener to listen as a piece of music. And therefore, you're not going to be getting them into those lower, slower brainwave states like low alpha and high theta, which is ultimately where we want to get people. From my experience, the best way to get them there is through these like almost drone type sonic waves and layers, just like waves lapping up at the shore, slow, drifty, dreamy spaciousness. So the handpan absolutely can play into that, but I would always just say to play it nice and slow and spacious.
You got me very relaxed now.
See, the voice itself was good
the voice. So I heard there that you were talking about acoustic instruments. What about digital or electric instruments? Do they fit in?
Martin Ware was actually who we co-host the Soundpower podcast with. He was the first ever person back in the day to say, let's do this. Let's fuse the acoustic, incredible ancient instruments that we have with modern technology. And as we know, Martin's, he's renowned for that. He's such a pioneer and he had a vision for it. And we collaborated on a project and we made this beautiful soundscape called Almost Human. And we actually performed it in Hamburg at the Elbe Philharmonie Orchestra Hall in front of 3,000 people. It was such a powerful experience. The structure of it was me and Tim would play an organic instrument, whether it was the flute, gong, drum, voice, bells, bowls. And then there was Martin and the Moog Orchestra, which consisted of Will Gregory as well from Goldfrapp and Adrian Utley from Portishead, 15 other amazing musicians. And they then emulated our natural sounds through the machine and they got them sounding pretty spot on. So we'd be playing really elaborate, obscure instruments like Mexican death whistles. And then they would respond intuitively in the moment with a synth pad type sound that matched it, and we fuse it in together. And it was so inventive. And I'm really seeing that this is the future of both music, modern entertainment purpose music, and therapeutic sound. Because my experience with working with one of my favorite projects, which is Quantum Sound, we do a project where we collaborate with DJs and we fuse our soundscapes there. There is a real space for this and a hunger for it. For those that were so connected to music in the rave days of old, but have maybe moved into a new chapter and they're not ready to just jump into gong bath in a yoga studio. It's too much of a leap, but they are up for doing some kind of interesting acoustic digital fusion that helps them feel connected to the party days where we all felt so sense of connection on the dance floor, but then with also these harmonious tones running through the speakers as well. So I'm really seeing this huge interest and passion for people experiencing the fusion of both worlds.
That's interesting. The reason I asked that is that, I remember the 90s particularly, and it still goes on, the trance music. The very word trance, sort of evolved out of dance music. And you'd see these people at raves and things well out of their heads, and probably due to substances enhancing it. But the actual, some of those sounds there really took you away, didn't they?
Yeah, I actually remember a festival where it was in Brazil, and our friend tricked us into going there. We all arrived and it turned out it was a 7-day trance festival with 24 hours of music a day, 7 days a week, everything trance. And I don't particularly care for trance. And we were like, why didn't you tell us it was trance music? And he said, because you wouldn't have come. And we were kind of stuck there, but we ended up having the most amazing time because it was kind of a situation like you can't beat them, join them. So we thought, right, let's give this a go. And we got into the trance element of it. And unlike other techno or other electronic musics where people kind of dance unified, the trance community kind of go into their own zone, I've noticed,
Yes.
and they've got their own one. And it's like they're dancing within their own torus field, their own electromagnetic field. And it's almost spiritual, because they get these incredible hand mudras, and the way they move was really powerful and potent. And God, they're tapping into something here, and it's basically trance inducing, hence the name. So I have experienced it, and you do get that in other electronic areas as well. But I think the trance inducing element of electronic music, you can get that too from, like, for example, receiving shamanic drumming, which is 4 beats a second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 for 20 minutes. That will take you into a place they call walking between worlds, where you're absolutely balancing hemispheres of the brain and just tightroping this really fine line. And that's the trance state. So I have experienced it both from electronic music and in therapeutic sound too. And it's very powerful that these practices can take you into those altered states without drugs. And it makes you feel like deeply connected to something so much greater than yourself. It's all through the healing and transformational power of sound.
I'd like to talk about the sound healing itself, Cherub. So if somebody goes into, let's say, one of your sessions, I know you do the training for sound healers themselves, but typically what would it entail? If I was going to go into a shop where they do it, what would I receive?
Well, there's many different formats of it. The most sort of template one that most people do is, it would be like a lying down experience generally. So you'd arrive, there'd hopefully be lots of lovely aromas, scents, some nice calming music playing, ideally hosted by a trained and certified and accomplished sound healer. So you know that because there's a lot about facilitation has to be held in a strong, calm and safe space, so that those can go in there and regulate their nervous systems and feel protected. So ideally that's happening. You then lie down on a yoga mat, iPad. God, got to disconnect from the electronics. Pillow and a blanket. And then the facilitator would probably give you a brief introduction on what's going to happen, so that you can really relax into it. Maybe guide some very gentle, deep breaths to bring you into the body and almost untether you from the outside world. Maybe do a little bit of light chanting or some just ahs or ums to really help to activate and clear the channel. And then you'd lie down, relax, and away we go. And it would be a 45-minute to an hour, beautiful, soothing soundscape, a fusion of planet gongs, crystal bowls, native flutes, drums, the voice, if you could be so lucky to receive that, Tibetan bowls, bells, all held in this really soft, soothing space. Ideally not too many peaks and crescendos, because that could maybe be a bit triggering for people.
So would it be performed live, or would it be a recording of the sounds generally?
I think live in any context is always better. I've listened to Florence and the Machine for 10 years on my phone, but I saw her live in Royal Albert Hall last year at the Proms, and it was the most transcendental musical experience ever. So I definitely am a subscriber to the live. I think that if you can get in a room where there's a live gong and you can get your head as close to that as you can, I think that is the medicine, and it is the most powerful that way. But lockdown showed us that we can perform online, and people listening at home with good quality headphones still get the benefit, still relax, still recalibrate, still drift off into a peaceful sleep. So I think both. I think you can benefit from listening to sound healing online on Spotify and stuff, as long as it's good quality. But wherever you can get yourself into a live scenario, I think it's always going to be more beneficial.
And what are the benefits that you mentioned there? What benefits, if I had 3/4 of an hour session, do I go in with do I say to the facilitator, look, I've got a problem with this, that, or the other? Or do I just go in there for like a general sort of, not MOT, but, like a bit of nourishment of sound? How does it work?
Think if you were going into a one-to-one, absolutely that would be appropriate for you to explain where you're at, and the therapist would then curate an experience that is directly in line with what you need. And maybe even if they've got that knowledge, using specific frequencies that can help bring out that effect. But if you're going into a group scenario, it's less bespoke and more of a soundscape created for everybody as sort of one sentient collective convergence of souls. But generally, after having held so many events over the years in so many different contexts, from huge mosques to floating on the River Nile to tiny yoga studios, the overall consensus that you find from people when they come out the other side is obviously deeply relaxed, less stressed, not so many active thoughts. The mind has begun to unwind. Then later on, many people quote having a full night's sleep for the first time in ages. There can often be some very powerful emotional responses where it brings up denser, more trapped emotions that the guest hasn't created any space for it to rise to the surface. It's like when you stick your finger in a pond and swish it around, all the mud comes up from the bottom, but eventually settles again. I think that's a good analogy of it. People feel like it can really shake up the emotions. But then sometimes people can ride this emotional wave, but then it reaches its peak and it subsides. And hours after or the next day, they just feel this deep sense of peace, and often guests return to life with a renewed sense of self.
And do you perform the sessions and teach people how to do it, or do you actually ever you ever have it administered to you nowadays?
Do I ever receive it? Not as much as I should, to be honest. I think because it's almost like, when you do so much of one thing, you become it.
Yeah.
I've learned how to regulate my nervous system just through simply 5 minutes of humming, or from picking up a couple of tuning forks and just aligning myself to that frequency. I do sometimes sit in front of the gong myself and give myself a little bit of a retune. I don't tend to go to events and receive. I think because it's such a huge part of my life that I crave silence a lot, actually. I've just moved to South Oxford. I'm by in the countryside.
Yeah.
Sitting with my back against a tree, for me, is actually a really good way for me to rebalance both my ears, because I'm often oversensitized to sound. So I was in a studio all day yesterday producing a new song. So it's a lot of being bombarded with a lot of course, hearing high frequency tones, but you got to balance that out. So I spend a lot of time in nature, in silence, actually, to recalibrate myself.
Yeah. You were talking there about what it's like in a group with a group of people, and I play the guitar in a band, and I have to say that certainly, I mean, the gigs are something else, but when you're actually rehearsing, that 2 hours that you're rehearsing just goes, and you're taken to a different place, and it's a fantastic feeling. And I've spoken to a couple of people recently. Ladies actually go to ladies' choirs, and they get that same sort of buzz, away for 2 hours. And they would admit they're not particularly musical as such, and they're not judged on how they sing, but they just thoroughly enjoy it.
I think that it is the fastest way to a sense of calm. And it's like, I guess it's flow state that people talk about. I like to relate it to Neverland, just that dreamy place between sleep and awake that Peter Pan goes to, and you have to get into that state to get there. And so for me, as I said earlier, it helped me to access the timelessness of being human. It's one of the only things in the world, apart from maybe a really intense Marvel superhero movie at the IMAX or Avatar or something, where you're just completely transfixed, you can't think of anything else. And it's probably the only thing that transcends me to a point where I'm not me, I'm not thinking, I'm not worrying, I'm not stressed about anything. I'm just playing music or singing. And then after it finishes, after the final note subsides and just resonates back into silence, and I start to come back to myself, it is like waking up from a dream. And so that is that flow state, I guess, that people talk about. The one thing that I think I want to emphasize at this point is this is accessible to everybody. As I've said, I'm no more musically gifted than anybody else at all. It doesn't come naturally to me at all. But I've just practiced a lot, and I've got the instruments, and I've invested, and I've dedicated myself. But being able to sing, to drum, to hum, it's accessible to everybody. It's ultimately, sound healing is very percussive, very intuitive, and accessible to all.
Yeah, and you run I was looking on your website, and you've got the Sound Healer Training Academy that you run. Tell us about that.
We founded that out of an understanding and an awareness that in order to collectively contribute to the ascension of humanity, we needed to expand the field of practitioners. That just me and Tim on our own, who is my sound partner, back in 2010, and seeing how small the field was, that it was really only aimed at spiritual people, and everybody who was coming to our gigs back then were already kind of awake to this ancient knowledge. We realized early on, right, we've got to expand the field of practitioners here. We've got to get this out there beyond the spiritual community. So we co-founded the Academy of Integrated Sonic Medicine, and over this past 15 years have trained many students worldwide, as far-flung as Alaska and amazing places all over the world where sound healing hasn't even reached yet. And we've created this incredible sound family who all believe in this shared vision of the more that we can activate and align to our own personal frequency, we then learn what it means to be a certified, embodied, grounded, safe sound practitioner. There's so much more to it than just getting a stick and whacking a gong. And I think that's the danger a bit of when any industry or field becomes trendy, is that people can jump on that trend and aren't necessarily as connected to the implications of that and how important it is to be part of something that's a little bit more solid and safe in a way. So we've created this academy as a way to take people from the beginning and infinitely on through that journey. We teach everything from the science of sound, the ethics, the contraindications, the artistry of sound, the magic of it, how we respond in the body. It's just, for me, it is the most powerful medicine and something that I find so fascinating. I'm still a student of it myself. Will always want to teach it. Will always want to be learning about it and sharing. And I've become, for me, I just want to be an advocate for this because I know that it's helped so many people. And it's amazing to then see our graduates go out there and expand the field even further because they're doing stuff that we haven't even dreamed up yet. One of our graduates last week was in the Houses of Commons. So
Really?
They're out there getting opportunities that we haven't even thought of yet. And they're in magazines, they're getting on radio shows. So it's so inspiring for us to then see what our graduates go out there and do. And we really feel that they're making some big waves and making ripples into the collective consciousness to make the world a little bit of a better place.
And if we've got any listeners who are interested in looking at becoming a sound healer, is it, I mean, we'll put the links on the show notes to the website, but is it something they've got to do in person? Is it online or is it both? How does it work?
It's both, but the online one is really only for global students that cannot go to the UK. And we only added that in during lockdown so that global students could still train because they couldn't get here. But we really recommend to do the in-person version because it's way more integrated. You get the actual hands-on guidance from us. You also get to meet your convergence, the class that you train with. And that is a lifelong bonds. Lots of students then go to collaborate together and support each other, accountability buddies. And when we're in the room together, it is pure magic, all singing, all humming. People that are gathering under that one banner of sound as a tool for healing and transformation. It's a very addictive energy to be part of. And so I always think in person, in any situation, wherever possible, is always more powerful.
And whereabouts does it take place in the UK?
Yeah, it's easy. It's very accessible. We use the same venue every year, Colette House. We love it. And yeah, we've expanded our sound family now worldwide. And we just always want to attract in fellow sound enthusiasts that share in this vision with us because it is one sound family. And even those who haven't trained with us are still our sound family. There's no us versus them. It's only us. The field can only expand. Yes, some say it's oversaturated because so many people are training, but I just don't have that mentality. I think if you actually did a litmus test, if I went out onto the street right now in Little Venice and asked 15 people on that road, do you know what sound healing is? I bet maybe one of them might say they'd heard of it. When you're in an echo chamber of seeing that everybody is getting into something and, it's becoming so popular, I think if you then go beyond your network and see the mainstream still doesn't know enough about it yet, there'll always be a call, I think, for sound healers. So for me, I just think it's something that's the most incredible, beautiful string to the bow. And when you learn a musical instrument, you feel less alone because you're so connected to something, and it's a beautiful thing learning a song or creating something that's just for you and giving that as an offering to other people. It's a very humble and very rewarding.
Yeah.
Okay.
If somebody's in, say, the north of England and they want to come on one of your courses, is it one of these courses that you can stay over? Is it done in a week or something, or is it every week, or how does it work?
Course. It's a 6-month course, and we have 3 or 4 in-person weekends. So the majority of it's online with hours and hours and hours of modules that you can watch online with workbooks. There's monthly Zoom Q&As. So the majority of it's done on the online student portal, and then people would travel in and get a hotel for the in-person stuff.
And moving on to the actual the benefits, you've described it very, very, very well and clearly. But if I've got a physical ailment, let's say, is that something that I would come to a sound healer for, or is it mainly mental? How does it work?
Absolutely, because I am firmly of the belief that most physical ailments would start as an energetic imbalance in the body. There's been some level of disharmony going on there that has then manifested itself as a physical illness. So from my perspective, if you're looking at anything from stress, anxiety, depression, a bad back, anything that is keeping you out of balance, if we addressed it and targeted it at the absolute root, at the energetic center, you could almost work out how to dissipate that energy, release the denser trapped emotion and vibration around that part of the body. And over time, it would create this sweet release. So we have had untold amounts of anecdotal responses for people who've come to group sessions, even not even bespoke individual sessions, but people who've come with bad backs or sore knee or arthritis in the neck. Myself, I have arthritis in this one index finger for some reason. Always it's better after I've done a sound healing for a group. So the benefits, whilst I think there's still a long way to go before Western science can absolutely nail on that this harmonious tone will fix your back. I think we're a way away from that, but anecdotally, I can absolutely say for certain that even just getting yourself into that state where you can regulate the nervous system through sound. Not only that, therapeutic sound can also deactivate the sensory connectors that deactivate pain, your pain sensors basically. So
Yes.
Whilst it may be temporary, you could end up leaving the session just feeling like you've had a couple of paracetamol. The pain just has been massively subdued. So that's the power of it. I would love to align with scientists, and I'm sure we will at some point in the future, to really dig deeper into how we can validate this. But at the same time, like I say, I trust wholeheartedly in it, and I have seen firsthand the benefits of receiving therapeutic sound, even if it's just to temporarily numb the pain. And I have heard people say my back pain went away, never came back. So there have been miraculous responses and accounts like that too.
I'm not sure if you've heard of this chap. Don't know if you can see it there. Stefan Kolsch.
Yes, we interviewed him on Sound
You've
Power
interviewed him now. Yeah, I gave the details through to Martin. It's a fantastic book. And so we were saying there about, having some proof, et cetera, et cetera. He goes into a lot of details about some of the studies that have been done. It's a great book to read. And there's no doubt in his view that sound of all types helps people, from people that have had strokes and all sorts of things.
So he's a fascinating guy. Thank you for introducing us to him, because I think is what the field have been waiting for.
Yes.
Because the book that he's written it's like now the new Bible for how to connect science and sound, which is what I think many people have been craving in order to feel that this field is becoming validated. And it's amazing to know that people are so dedicated to doing these studies. I wish I had that skill set to do it myself.
Yeah. No, it's a good book. Well worth reading. So do you have any stories? You mentioned a bit earlier on there about anecdotal stuff. Have you got any particular stories you'd like to share with listeners about somebody who's come along to one of your sessions and their life's been changed?
My God, I've got so many, but there's one or two that stand out that just really touched me. And I remember, and this was a few years ago, a guy who was probably in his early 50s, his wife, who loves sound healing, was quite spiritual, booked it for him. He didn't want to come. His energy was just like, I'm only here because my wife's bought the ticket, very much like arms folded. He was going out of his way to not enjoy it. But I just trusted that he'd settle into it. He was in a group scenario. He came up to me at the end with tears in his eyes and said, I haven't been able to cry since I was a child, not because I don't feel emotion, but because I just didn't know. I didn't know how. And I feel like you've unlocked something in me, and I didn't know that I was allowed to do this. And he had tears in his eyes, and he's like, I need my mum to experience this. And he then became a regular guest of ours. And I literally watched him soften over a period of years to the point where he eventually trained. And he was an accountant, and then he became our student, and he had no intention of leaving the accountancy. He loves numbers. He just was fascinated by it. And now he's also a certified sound therapist. He plays with his wife, who's also trained with us, and he plays for himself. And that's it. He'll hum while he's doing his accounts, and he has tuning forks on his desk. And that's as far as he wanted to take it. He didn't want to ever do it for a full-time role. But that always stands out to me because, the snap judgments that we all make of each other. So he came and was like, this isn't for me. I saw him and thought, he's probably not going to enjoy this. And the first 5 minutes, he was shifting uncomfortably and opening his eyes. He yawned. But I just had to, you can't get too distracted by what's going on out there. You've got to really stay in your center.
Yes.
So I just let the sound do the work. And over the hour, that first session, I literally saw him soften and the exhale and then to see the tears at the end after he'd said that he hadn't been able to cry in 50 years. So, I mean, we could talk for days on things like that, but that was always the one that stood out to me the most because he became a friend and I see how that then impacted his relationship with his wife and his kids and his clients. So it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it really is. Well, we could talk all day about this. Tell us about the Sound Power podcast. I listened to it with Martin Ware from Heaven 17. Tell us about that particular show.
I feel so lucky to be Martin's friend and for him to take a chance on me. He originally asked me to come on his podcast, Electronically Yours, which we did, which was great because, he's had guests on like Naz Rodgers and people that were, true world-class musicians. I don't know why he wanted me to go on it, but I loved having that platform. And then that led us to doing a co-talk called The Power of Sound at Conway Hall, which was amazing. And we've got this really deep connection, both northern, both working class, both obsessed with sound and music in its many forms. So he suggested it. Let's just do our own podcast. And we went for it. And what I love about it is I'm collaborating with, I've got my area of expertise. He's got his. And together we interview guests that have whatever level of expertise that they have in the arena of music and sound. And we both come at it from really different perspectives. So I think it's a really interesting conversation because we've got Martin's absolute pioneering way showing more electronic wizardry. He's a total sound architect and he's been utilizing sound as a tool for empowerment since the 80s because in a way, well, not in a way, he shaped the sound of a generation and innovated through electronics and socially conscious messaging. And that's where we connect because he's music, I'm sound healing, but we both feel passionate about elevating humanity through empowerment. And he's done it through his lyrics and through his music. And I've been doing it through my visionary sound healing. So together, I think it just creates a really nice dynamic. With every ep that we do, it becomes less about talking about sound and more about sonic social justice and how we can start to all pool our resources and contribute to a beautiful new earth through the embodied use of sound.
This sounds like a movement.
Please, it is. Join us. We need all the help we can get.
Well, it's been great talking to you, Cherub. And one thing I haven't asked you yet is what some of these instruments sound like. Is there any chance that you could give us a little sample?
Well, you'd never ask.
It would be rude not to.
Exactly. A sonic tonic treat for you and all your listeners from my heart to yours.
Thank you.
So for those that are listening, maybe even closing their eyes, just taking a few nice deep breaths in.
What a way to end the show. Beautiful.
Thank you.
That was a lovely... You took me into a different world there, Cherub.
See how quickly you can go there.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure our listeners will have enjoyed that. There was a particular instrument by your left-hand side down on the floor, which I particularly like the sound of that. Well, what's that one?
This is the Deluxe Reverie Harp. It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the sound of the heavens themselves and the angels.
Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Feel so lucky because we don't work at sound, we play sound. So I get to play for a living, which is very much aligned with my motto in life, which is spread love, joy and colour. So just bringing a little bit of love, joy and colour into people's lives through the very beautiful, soothing powers of sound.
Well, thank you ever so much for doing that. That's been a really nice ending to the show. Well, Cherub, this has been a really interesting and fascinating conversation about the wonders of sound and how it can help benefit our lives. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners will be seeing the benefits of sound in a totally different way. You've been listening to a conversation with Cherub Sanson, exploring the art and science of sound healing and the ways vibration can guide us towards greater harmony and awareness. If you'd like to learn more about Cherub's work, you can find links and further reading in the show notes. Thank you for coming on the show, Cherub.
Thank you. I've loved it so much. I'm excited to be your friend.
I'm Bob Wells, and you've been listening to the Undercurrent Stories podcast. Join us next time as we continue to explore ideas that resonate in every sense of the word.